Okay. Not even sure if this is going to work. This is the second time that I've recorded this podcast today because I've had some technical issues, which is fine. We do what we can with what we got. I'm not rattled. You are. Okay. So this week's podcast, I'm going to be talking about defining your purpose. So have you ever been at a party or a function and someone asks you the dreaded question, so what is it that you do? And I hate that question. I can't even explain it. How do you tell someone, oh, I'm an ex special forces officer. I'm an author. I'm a podcast host, have a leadership consultancy. I do army reserves. I'm a high performance coach, a dad, a partner, a patriot. I want to save the koalas. I mean, Jesus Christ. Yeah, man, I do business consultancy. I mean, it doesn't even come close to explaining who I am as a human. So what about you? Do you even know, what you do or why you do what you do? I mean, really, could you tell me what drives you? If you had to explain in a single sentence, could you do it? Or would you fumble around with a whole lot of rubbish like I just did? The first thing that comes into your mind and out your mouth, or maybe even what's expected of you. Would you just say a job title, perhaps? I'm a shift supervisor. I'm an accountant. I'm a police officer, soldier, doctor, lawyer. Yeah, cool story, bro. They're all just job titles. Simon Sinek's Start With Why popularized this great idea that leaders and organizations don't just focus on what they do, they're deeply rooted in why they do it. So, purpose isn't just some corporate crappy buzzword. It's actually at the heart of motivation. It's also the engine of motivation. It's what gives teams and individuals resilience. So when things turn to crap, it ensures that people and leaders, we can still achieve impact because we can draw back on our purpose. But how do you define your purpose? That's where the real work happens. And today, hopefully, all things going well, this gets actually recorded, then we're going to unpack exactly that. I'm going to break down purpose into its fundamental parts. Your why. So this is the belief that fuels you. You might not even know what that is yet. Your how, the way you then bring that belief to life. And lastly, your what. So those tangible actions that you take in the world to live out your purpose. And along the way, I'm going to explore some psychology and behavioral science and see what that has to say about purpose and why it matters, how it shapes your decisions, and how you can build, I guess, an intentional life around it. So by the end of this episode, my promise to you is that you'll have a framework to articulate your purpose clearly. And perhaps this then can help you make better decisions about where you spend your time and what opportunities you say yes to, and maybe more importantly, what you say no to. Okay, let's bust right into it. So, why does it matter to have a purpose in the first instance? I've spent a lot of time researching motivation and meaning. And when I listen to people who study motivation, they often talk about extrinsic versus intrinsic drivers. So, money, recognition, and then those external rewards, these push people forward. But from what I've found and what I've heard, they rarely sustain motivation over the long term. Purpose, on the other hand, taps into something much deeper, what psychologists call self-determination theory. Motivation is one of those things people constantly overcomplicate. We think it's about bigger rewards, having tighter deadlines, more pressure, really motivating. But that's not how it works at all. Self-determination theory, or SDT for short, breaks it down into three core psychological needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Now, autonomy means to have control over your own choices. So, being able to go to work and think about how you want to do the job, being able to determine what issue you want to solve and how you want to solve it, have the means, have all the resources there to do it in the way that you want to do it rather than just be told what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. Competence is about feeling capable and also being effective. So, having the skills and the knowledge to do the job and then being effective in seeing that job through. And then relatedness, that's the social glue, that feeling of connection to others in a meaningful way, contributing to the team. So when these needs are met, motivation isn't something you have to force onto people. You don't need to motivate people with a big stick, right? It happens naturally. But when any one of these sort of parts is missing, even the best incentives don't usually work for very long. That's why extrinsic motivation, so chasing bonuses, promotions, more status, it really only gets you so far. The real game changer is to be intrinsically motivated, doing something because you find it meaningful and perhaps enjoyable, or maybe both. So if you want sustained drive, whether for yourself or if you want to build that for your team, it's not about adding more pressure. It's really about creating an environment where people feel they're in control, where they feel capable, and then they feel connected. Those sort of three pillars. That's where real engagement happens. It also stands to reason that most people are the most motivated when they feel a sense of autonomy, competence, and connection. It just seems that purpose fuels all three. As an example, think of a researcher spending years on a cure for a disease, a scientist working tirelessly in a lab, not for fame or financial gain, but because they are deeply committed to solving a problem that they think could save lives. Or perhaps you could identify with an artist, creating music or literature, artwork, despite absolutely no guarantee of recognition, perhaps not even in their lifetime. They continue to produce things, not because they expect to sell their work, perhaps, but because they find joy and fulfillment in that creative process itself. Or maybe it's more accessible to talk about a coach, a sports coach, mentoring young athlete. So a sports coach who dedicates extra hours to training, sort of things they're not even being paid for, no bonus, no promotions, but they genuinely want to help athletes reach their full potential. That's intrinsic motivation. And when we think about individual and team resilience, especially in those high stake environments, so such as the military or elite sports, or just general leadership, purpose is what keeps people going when things get difficult. But here's the challenge. Most people think they know their purpose until you ask them to define it. So when someone says to me, "Hey, what do you do?" I'm able to define that pretty clearly now. And then I say to them, "So what's your purpose?" As opposed to "What job do you do?" And most people are floored by that. So how do you actually figure out what drives you? Knowing your purpose starts with defining your why. Simon Sinek's Golden Circle was groundbreaking when it was released. It really did help set me on a course for where I am today. Before we get into that framework, let's talk about something deeper, your core beliefs. Ask yourself this: what's the one thing you believe about the world that guides your decisions? What problem do you wake up wanting to solve? What's the golden thread? What's the through line that connects everything you do with your purpose? So this isn't about job titles or outcomes. It's about the emotional driver behind all of that. Okay, I'll go first. What's the one thing I believe about the world that guides my decisions? Anyone who's been following Warrior U or now in hindsight, they know that I believe that leadership is an energy transference, that the way people lead, communicate, and show up has a ripple effect on everyone around them. I also believe that resilience is something that is built, you're not born with it, and that people and teams can be shaped to operate at a really high level if they understand themselves and the environment around them. What problem do I wake up wanting to solve? I don't need an alarm clock. My goals wake me, right? I want to solve the gap between potential and execution in leadership, resilience, and also decision making, whether it's through coaching, writing, running workshops. I'm driven to help people and teams break through their limitations, to see things more clearly and for them to make better choices under pressure. Now, I'm not interested in surface level leadership buzzwords, just the wank words of the day. I want to get to the core of what really makes people effective as leaders and team members. What's the through line, that golden thread that connects everything I do? So, my purpose and everything I do at its core is all about empowering people to be better leaders and truly to make work not suck for team members under a leader's charge. I want leaders to operate with clarity and resilience in this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. Now, I do that through, I guess, the books that I write, the podcast, the weekly newsletter, my workshops for business to business, or my business to individual coaching. It all ladders up to helping people lead with intention, think critically, and develop that kind of resilience that carries them through adversity. Now, here's a fact you might not know. Research on meaning making suggests that people who have a strong sense of purpose don't just stumble upon it. They have actually intentionally constructed it through reflection and action. One exercise I love is the best self exercise. I use it in a lot of my workshops. And the way it works is I say to people, think back to a time when you felt most energized. Think back to when you felt really effective. Think back to a time where you can think to yourself, this is awesome. I feel really fulfilled with this. And then I say, write it down. What were you doing? And let's unpack it. What strengths were you using? Maybe even what were you solving? Who were you helping? These moments, they all hold clues to your purpose, to your why. And I'll give you an example. For me, I'm at my best when people turn to me to lead, when there's confusion and complexity and high stakes and things have to be broken down into their component parts for clarity. I thrive in those moments when teams are stuck and when it's on me to guide them through it. Now, I've experienced this in special forces. I experienced it in combat, some really hairy, complex situations. I've had it at work, I've had it in the boardroom, I've had it underground in mine sites. It's not just about making decisions, but for me, it's about bringing people together, ensuring that all the voices in the team are heard, that I can align people's perspectives and turn chaos into collaboration. That's it. That's where it was for me. A lot of people want a lightning bolt moment, but purpose isn't something you find. It's something you slowly uncover. So a real world example of this, if we think of someone who's can be, or who is quite topical at the moment, is Elon Musk. Now, look, whether you people will be like, well, whether you love him or hate him, his why is really clear, and he said it often. He believes humanity needs to be multi-planetary to survive. Now, everything he does, from Tesla to SpaceX, if you think about the early days of Uber, if you think about when he was involved he is with Starlink. If you think about Twitter or X, if you think about all these different things, okay, it all sort of flows from that belief, and he's building the skills and knowledge for how he can be interplanetary. Your why doesn't have to be as grand as colonizing Mars, perhaps, but it does need to be personal and compelling enough to guide your decisions. So just take a moment, right? Ask yourself, what do I believe about the world? And how does that belief shape what I do? And I'll be talking about beliefs in a future podcast. But for the moment, knowing your purpose is also about what do you believe about yourself and the world as well. All right. So how to bring your purpose to life. Once you've got a rough idea of your why, the next step is really defining your how. This is about the values and the principles that shape your actions. For example, if your why is about empowering others, your how might be through coaching, writing, or leadership, right? If your why is solving complex engineering problems, your how might be through research, strategy, innovation. Your how is about alignment, making sure that the way you show up in the world is consistent with your deeper purpose. And this is where behavioral science plays a key role. We often assume that purpose is enough, but research shows that purpose with structure and then habits is what really brings purpose to life. So in his book, Atomic Habits by James Clear, he says how your systems need to support your identity. So if you want to live your purpose, you have to ask, what daily behaviors reinforce my why? What habits help me stay on track? And then that habit stacking and behaviors will reinforce your purpose. The best leaders don't just think about purpose in theory, they embed it into their daily action. And here's one quick test. If I followed you around for a week with a notebook and pen, which I've done to people, I might add, would I be able to see your purpose in action? Now, if the answer is no, then you've got some recalibrating to do. So we have the why, we have the how, which is the stacking of habits and behaviors, and now for the what. And this is where Simon Sinek said it best. Most people, most companies start with their what, but that's the last thing. Your what is like your job title. So what do you do? I'm a leadership theorist, or I work at Hindsight, or I'm currently working on this project. These are the things people see on your LinkedIn profile, which anyone who knows, LinkedIn. Anyway, but here's the thing. Your what can actually change, but your why should stay the same. And if we think about the first modern influencer, which is Oprah Winfrey, right? She compelled people to do what she wanted them to do because they wanted to do it. She influenced purpose, motivation, direction. Her what has evolved. She started out as a journalist, then a talk show host, a philanthropist, a media mogul. But her why, that's been rock solid the whole way through. She believes in people, in helping people to work out how to live their best lives. That's what it was. So when defining your what, the key really is around flexibility. Your what should serve your why, not the other way around. So if your job disappeared tomorrow, could you still live your purpose? One of the biggest career mistakes people make is over-identifying with their job title instead of their purpose. Psychologists talk about this role engulfment, when people tie their entire identity to what they do instead of why they do it. The most fulfilled people see their jobs as a vehicle, not a destination. For years, what consumed me as a special forces officer was my identity. It was always tied to the mission. I wanted to achieve that no matter the cost. I was driven, relentless. And I measured success by the outcomes that I achieved, not by how I grew other leaders or how I built relationships and trust. Don't get me wrong, I loved my platoon on operations, as I talk about in the commando way. But they wouldn't have known it because I wasn't leading them. I was leading missions. The irony of this is that my true purpose has always been to lead others and to help build more leaders. I wanted to develop other leaders within my team. But I was so engulfed in the role and the body armor that I wore as an analogy, which was, hey, I'm a special forces officer, as opposed to, hey, I'm a leader, that I just lost sight of my purpose. It should have been the other way around. I should have been putting those people first and the mission second. Now, whenever I meet up with anyone from my platoon that I took to Afghanistan these days, I want to know everything about them. So, where'd you come from? Where'd you grow up? What was your family life like? How are you now? What's like, it's so different for me. I wish I'd known that then, because that to me is being authentic to your purpose, not, hey, what skills do you have that I can use to succeed in my mission? It really took stepping away from that world to realize that real leadership isn't just about execution. It's really about elevating those you lead. Okay, some closing thoughts. If you want to define your purpose, start with your why. What do you believe? What drives you? Then define your how. What values and habits are going to bring that purpose to life? And then clarify your what. What actions express your purpose? What is it that you do to bring those other things to life? And remember, purpose isn't something you find just this once and then forget about it. It's something you need to refine, you need to live it, and it needs to adapt with you over time as you change as well. So, my challenge to you this week, I want you to spend the next week paying attention. Look at what excites you, what frustrates you, what lights you up. These are the little breadcrumbs along the trail leading you to understanding more about your purpose. And if you've got something out of this week's podcast, please share it with a friend. And also the newsletter is out tomorrow, which will have a bit more of a psychological deep dive into purpose. Until next week, keep questioning, keep refining, and I want you all to lead with intention. Bye for now.